that's truly brilliant.
बंद करते हो बीच में?
The great thing about brilliant commentaries is that they take the argument forward and generate spaces for questioning in an intellectually healthy way what some distinctions or some elements of the argument might have left uncovered or unsaid. So one can only be thankful for this kind of brilliance in commentary, because I think it will take the argument about, I'm writing a book on democracy, so this is the best commentary I will see on my democracy work thus far. So thank you. Now let me tell you what I can say. There is an easier question, which is the Thomas solution question. And there is a general side to it and there is a particular side to it. The particular side is as follows. It is true that the 2014 campaign was not an international campaign. I analyzed 74 speeches, and I was in Banaras for the last speech. I think May 11th. May 11th speech I described to you, goes really in the direction in which you were taking the argument. So this is outside Banaras city in a college, and candidate Modi, not Prime Minister then, candidate Modi first presents either Mr. Siddiqui or Mr. Ansari as a Bharati Hind Fauj ka ye, so Subhash Chandra Bose's army ke wo colonel hua karte. So a 7'2" man. I have my notes for this, that doesn't matter. A Muslim was presented to thousands of us who were there for the last speech as a great patriot, and Mr. Modi touched his feet. And then the basic text of the, there's a lot of screens. The technology, 2014 was the first big high technology election in national level. Without their practice. So they had pictures from, videos from Sabarmati, banks of Sabarmati, and this is what will be done to Varanasi. But most important discussion there was of how Banaras ke bunkar, I'll translate it for those who don't speak Hindi, and of course JNU is full of them, from people from the south and the east, and I went through here, so I know that. So आप जो बुनकर हैं, आप बुनकरों को जो है आमदनी आपकी इसलिए कम है क्योंकि आपको इंटरनेशनल मार्केट्स में किसी ने नहीं कनेक्ट किया, आपको साबरमती से किसी ने नहीं कनेक्ट किया. Now who's worth bunkers of? There is a famous Gyamendra Pandey essay on Julahas of UP, something like that. And the Julahas, the weavers of eastern UP tend to be Muslim. Though they would in Western also, that would be, but in Eastern UP, in Banaras, they tend to be overwhelmingly Muslim. So he was appealing to Muslim bunkers, starting with Azad Hind Fauj ke Ansari Sahab, unke pair chhu rahe hain, right? So touching the feet of this, the colonel of the Azad Hind Fauj, Bosedan, and then the Muslim bunkers to be connected to Sabarmati model of Gujarat and to international, and then the bunkers will prosper. Right? There's nothing Hindu nationalist in this either imagery or the argument. And in those 74 speeches that I examined, only one was about, he said something about Bhans and Guy, somewhere I think in Assam. Only one. Right? So you're right. The campaign was not Hindu nationalist, though you could argue that the subterranean theme was that RSS people were going to Banaras neighborhoods, knocking at the door, trying to bring out the vote, which they did not this time, which I also researched. I kept looking in our Where exactly they came, did they come or not? Did they knock at the door? The answer was no. RSS was not coming up, mobilizing vote for Mr. Modi this time, right? Now, you can say whether it's generalizable beyond Awadh, I don't know. Awadh, Agra, certainly that wasn't true. And maybe, I think, turned out to be generally true as others were. Anyway. So it was not a Hindu national, and then he came in, and then a very different kind of governance started emerging. Right? Including the idea, which he stopped for some time, that Yogi Adityanath had on 25th December of 2014, 25,000 मुसलमानों को हम हिंदू बनाएंगे अलीगढ़ में. 25 December को. What is the relation with 20th December? Only Yogi Adityanath can explain. That's Christian festival. But 25 December को 25,000, I know Aligarh very well. I've studied it in my Hindu Muslim book. 25,000 मुसलमानों को हिंदू बनाना है. Then you start with the exhibition ground. You come all the way to Ghantaghar. This would have been a recipe for riots and riots and riots. This is where riots take place, a lot of through the Katpula, etc. So anyway, and he stopped it, but nonetheless, that particular argument of the party started becoming stronger and stronger, and Mr. Modi certainly did not call Akhlaq when he was there. And he was only 60 kilometers away from 7 Lakh Place Coast Road, right? He was Chandu. He could have gone there in half an hour, he would have reached. In any case, he could have called. And Akhlaq was not called. Akhlaq's lynching was clearly a turning point. That this kind of lynching is fine. I mean, Muslims, Hindus used to lose their lives, now that Muslims lose their lives. That sort of argument, right? He never uttered it the same way. But yes, when he was caught in Calcutta by sometimes reporters, at that time reporters used to ask questions, right? Modi ki aapne akhlaq ke bare mein kuch nahi kaha. Mujhse kyun pooch rahe ho? I'll translate. Why are you asking me? Ask the state government. Law and order is not my job. State government was run by Akhilesh at that point. Right? And then a week later in Guna, in Guna, not Guna, Guna is in Madhya Pradesh, Pune, in Gujarat, 5 Dalits were lynched, not to death, luckily. Were lynched, were roped to trees and hit right by a mob. And Mr. Modi speaks a day after in Indore or in Bhopal, and he says, "Dalito ko kyun maar rahe ho, mujhe maro." Then the question of law and order did not emerge, because the ideological project was very clear. Dalits have to be brought into the Hindu fold, and this goes into the second point. Dalits have to be brought into the Hindu fold. You cannot lynch them. Muslims are not part of the community. This is not the community we are trying to build, as I argue. Hindutva communitarianism includes Dalits, indeed does. This is no longer your right to say that Golwalkar and Golwalkar RSS, post-Golwalkar RSS had a concept called social engineering, which was promoted by Govindacharya. Its precise purpose was this. Govindacharya had to be fired because he had an affair with Uma Bharti. You can't do it as a pracharya. You're not allowed to have sex. You're not allowed to have sex, period. As a pracharya. You have to be ceased to be a pracharya to have any romantic romance in your life. Now, so he was fired, but the concept has the blessings of post-Golwalkar RSS. Social engineering is the idea. And the idea is that Dalits and OBCs have to be brought into Hindu fold in a much more equal way. Right? They will be part of a large Hindu community. So you're right, the second point is absolutely right. The new BJP or the new Hindu nationalist is not committed to upper caste hegemony in the old way. They defended the caste system in the 50s and 60s. And the idea that caste was the basis for reservation, they found completely unacceptable, though they have ambivalence towards it even now. Right? However, the idea that Hindu community has to be more inclusive is there. Whether or not that means upper caste hegemony has to go remains an unsettled question. As some scholars have shown by looking at the social background of the elites of BJP, there is, of course, a great symbolic move towards an ST president an OBC this, a Dalit that. However, the upper caste control of the party apparatus, upper caste control, and you do make that point actually, that splitting the Dalit community or splitting the OBC into lower and upper OBC, upper and lower OBC, and upper Dalit and lower Dalit, that actually helps the upper caste, right? The more you split this lower community, the more, and the more you don't say anything about that. So they are not saying anything about upper caste hegemony. It's not that they are attacking you. So Mr. Modi, if you use M.N. Srinivas's term, Mr. Modi has Sanskritized himself. Right? He has a very Brahminical style. Vedas, this, that, right? And the pujan and all that. He has a very Brahminical style, and he never says anything about the upper caste hegemony that historically existed in Hindu society. Right? So yes, the attempt is to include more and more. It may end up having the effect of maintaining upper caste hegemony. After all, 72% of upper caste in 2019 voted for them. When you see, the FCS data is slightly confused about this. It's not clear. When I took their data in 2019, it said 72% of upper caste voted for BJP. Basically, that upper caste of only certain parts of India did not vote. Maybe Bengal. Right? But 72% is a lot of vote of 20% of India. Right? So the 14% was straightforward upper caste in their 30% of 30-point-some% of 2014. And anyway, but of course the big point was that in 2019, 44% of OBCs voted for BJP. That's just less than half. And 33%, every third Dalit voted for that. Those numbers have come down this time. Not very, very substantially so, but fairly noticeably so.
They've lost 20
Right?
reserve.
Right. So they're very noticeably so. So, but the project is very clear. I think you're right to say that one way to take the liberal versus electoral argument is to say that actually they're using some liberal stratagems, right, to shore themselves up electorally and weaken liberalism. Using liberalism to weaken liberalism, right? Using liberal strategies, which of course the idea that you have to include more and more is part of a, that modern day liberalism would approve of that. John Stuart Mill would not. But modern liberalism, post-Mill liberalism would absolutely approve that, right? So yes, you're right. And therefore, this would be an interesting way to move forward in the argument. Use of liberal stratagems to weaken liberal democracy and shore yourself electorally. That has not worked very, very well this time in 2024. Whether that's the opening of a new trend, Yogendra would like to argue it is. And I think it is. But yes, this has been, thank you for putting it out that there is a connection between liberal and electoral of a kind that my argument is not anticipating or not dealing with. The question about the Karutha's main argument, it applies to India, but I think we can produce a lot of evidence, political evidence of different parts of the world, that there is demand for authority. I'm not saying in the Indian context I can prove it to you, but in Latin American democracies, I don't know why the Reuters are not looking at that. The political science of Latin America have repeatedly shown demand that appears again and again. It's not persistent. Demand for authoritarianism and demand for a punitive state. And why do we forget that American South, between 1880 and 1965, the demand for a punitive state was very high. Punish the blacks. And the majority, the white majority community wanted blacks punished and punished badly, including through lynchings, which were widely celebrated. Postcards were made of lynchings, and picture postcards were made, so pictures of people being strung from the trees, right, and killed that way, with people dressing up in their finery, children coming wearing ties, and watching the show. and this both picture postcards made and then commercially released. There was a demand for punishment, there was a demand for authoritarian state with respect to certain groups. The issue was which groups you could stigmatize. Right? So I don't know why Karuthar is missing that, though he's right about India, and he's right that that's not how Trump emerged. He's also right about it. So it could be a much more India and US bias, the argument, if he pays attention to the very systematic element that is much better. And American South. Why did he forget his own country? American South has a serious demand for authoritarian punishment. Not with respect to rights, but with respect to a stigmatizing. That was the idea. So, so if you look at what Mr. Modi was saying, उन्होंने दलितों को क्यों मारा, मुझे मारो, लेकिन मुसलमानों को मारो। मुसलमानों को लिंच करो, तो दलितों को क्यों करो? That's the idea. A punitive state for Muslims, for Dalits. Right? Now, of course, he may not succeed in that, because upper class biases are pretty serious about these.
May not even mean it.
Yeah, may not even mean it, perhaps. But that's the idea. I think I have enough to say, but that's all I have to say. Elite driven, we can talk about it later. But the point is, thank you for the brilliance of the content.
This is just wonderful, the way Ashutosh presented his case and the kind of distinction that he made between electoral democracy on the one side and liberal on the other side. And the kind of this is unpacking of some of the most complex ideas, and the way Ajay showed that many of the assumptions which were there could actually be removed because the way BJP does its politics, and the politics that BJP does is not necessarily that cannot be taken back to its ideological position for every action that it takes, because the democratic system also makes it important for BJP to behave in certain ways so that the ideological hegemony can be retained with certain kind of strategic function that can be confounding at times. And so there's a difference between the form of politics and substantive politics. And one has to really make a sense of these two in the most complex of situations. So this is a fantastic kind of presentation, both the presentations I would say. And I'm sure that there are many questions from this audience. So can we invite...
Before you open, can I just ask on the data, like this part of using liberalism to undermine liberal point, to concepts as theoretically active. Can it be backed by data? And how do we interpret this number?
One has to think creatively. One has to think. But it can be. One has to think creatively.
So this federalism question. But federalism question is, for instance, now in Bengal.
It's a very right point you're making about federalism. Yes.
Yeah. And
it has to be thought through carefully. I think BJP might go for the idea of Mayawati's idea of 4 UPs.
So, yeah.
It's quite possible.
They have that conversion. In fact, Bundelkhand and Hyderabad too.
It's quite possible. 4 UPs. I'm in favor of 4 UPs incidentally. As you know.
They're all people all support.
but in Bengal, for instance,
That means,
so one has to keep the political strategy.
That's right.
Is it a federalism one or is it a political one? So yes, questions.
is this a microphone that will come?